Welcome to the Cozy Historian. If you find yourself drifting off before the story ends, that's perfectly fine. Just remember to like and subscribe before you fall asleep. It helps these quiet journeys through time softly continue. And before your eyes grow heavy, tell me in the comments, what time is it where you are, and what's the last thing you did before bed? Tonight, we're traveling back to the very beginning of rest itself. So fluff your pillow, pull up your blanket, and let's drift back to the world's very first bed. But tonight, our journey stops in the hushed parlors and curtained bedrooms of Victorian England, where the art of sleep was taken quite seriously indeed. Imagine, if you will, a winter evening in London. The fog presses close against the windows, and the steady tick of a mantel clock marks the closing of the day. Beyond the soot-darkened panes, lamplighters make their rounds, their poles lifting tiny halos of fire against the gloom. But within the home, warm, orderly, and scented faintly of beeswax, another ritual is unfolding. In the age of Queen Victoria, bedtime was not merely a moment of rest, but a moral and spiritual ceremony. Sleep, like work and prayer, was seen as a reflection of one's character. A well-ordered night meant a well-ordered soul. For women, the process of retiring could take nearly an hour. The elaborate gowns and corsets of daytime were replaced by soft lawn nightdresses, often edged with lace or ribbons. Hair, pinned high for most of the day, was carefully brushed. Sometimes 100 strokes, no more, no less, to encourage health and tranquility. A dab of lavender water or rose oil at the temples soothed both nerves and vanity. At the dressing table, surrounded by glass jars and silver brushes, one might pause to whisper a prayer or glance through a cherished devotional. The small details, folding stockings neatly, winding the watch, smoothing the coverlet, carried a quiet sanctity. To end the day with care was to affirm one's moral grace. Gentlemen's routines were no less particular. After supper, and perhaps a final cigar, many would retreat to their studies before bed. There they might pen a brief note in their diary, or read a few lines from the Bible or Shakespeare. When at last they retired, they changed into nightshirts of flannel or cotton, sometimes monogrammed, and slipped beneath heavy quilts that smelled faintly of starch and smoke. In grander homes, the household machinery of bedtime was a choreography in itself. Maids turned down sheets, warmed blankets with brass pans filled with embers, and left a carafe of water and glass on the nightstand. A single candle burned in a brass holder, never for reading, merely for reassurance in the dark. And in modest cottages, where luxury was scarce, the rituals were simpler but no less cherished. A cup of broth, a shared blanket, and the murmur of a prayer by the hearth could make even the humblest room feel rich in warmth. The Victorian preoccupation with rest came at a curious time, for this was an age of relentless motion, of steam trains, telegraphs, and restless ambition. Yet the more the world quickened, the more Victorians seemed to treasure slowness in the home. Bedtime became a small rebellion against the noise outside. Many believed that sleep carried moral meaning. A restless night suggested guilt or moral decay. Sound sleep was proof of a clear conscience. Physicians wrote endlessly about the right way to sleep, the correct number of hours, the best posture, even the ideal bed height for healthy digestion. Bedrooms themselves reflected this philosophy. Gone were the medieval hangings that smothered rooms in darkness. The Victorian bedroom was airy and modest, a place of health. Etiquette manuals advised that windows be opened before bed to allow God's air to circulate, though this often invited a chill. Carpets were swept daily, and chamber pots discreetly emptied. In well-appointed homes, the bedroom's decor whispered both refinement and restraint. Pale wallpapers patterned with ferns or ivy, embroidered pillows, lace curtains trembling in the draught. Every detail reflected an ethic of cleanliness and control. Over the bed, one might find a print of a tranquil landscape or a scripture verse. Never anything too passionate or worldly. For the Victorians, sleep was not only bodily rest, but spiritual renewal. Many recited prayers of protection against the dangers of the night. Lighten our darkness, they would say, and defend us from all perils and dangers of this night. To them, the night was both holy and slightly perilous, a time when the soul drifted near mysterious edges. Superstition mingled quietly with faith. Mirrors might be covered before bed, lest they trap the wandering soul. Doors were locked not just for safety, but to guard against the unseen. Even the position of the bed, preferably east to west, was thought to influence the quality of sleep and the purity of dreams. In those candlelit hours, the line between the practical and the poetic blurred. A good night's rest was as much a matter of conscience as of comfort. By the 1870s, as industry and science reshaped the nation, a new fascination with the science of sleep took hold. Physicians such as Dr. Andrew Combe and Sir Henry Holland lectured that proper rest was essential to health and intellect. They advised cool rooms, early hours, and firm mattresses filled with horsehair rather than feathers. For softness, it was said, weakened the moral fibre. Manuals for domestic management, like those by Mrs. Beeton, spoke reverently of the bedroom as a temple of repose. To neglect its order was almost a moral failing. Sheets should be aired daily, and the bed never left unmade, for a slovenly bed breeds slovenly thought. Yet there were gentler voices too. Poets like Christina Rossetti and Matthew Arnold saw sleep as a bridge between worlds, a soft surrender to mystery. In their verses, the sleeper became a pilgrim, crossing through shadows toward renewal. Among the middle classes, a new kind of bedtime ritual emerged, reading aloud by lamplight. Families gathered in drawing rooms to share chapters from Dickens, Thackeray, or the newly popular Bronte sisters. The act of storytelling before bed, once reserved for children, became a moral and emotional anchor for adults too. In children's nurseries, the bedtime ritual was nearly sacred. Nurses oversaw the brushing of hair, the folding of day clothes, and the saying of prayers. Then came the story, a fable of virtue, or perhaps a tale of gentle wonder, like the water babies. The rhythm of the reader's voice, mingled with the creak of the rocking chair and the fading fire, lulled small hearts into dreams. In the hush that followed, the only sounds were the wind outside, the faint tick of the mantel clock, and the soft sigh of the household settling into sleep. And yet, even in those moments of calm, the outside world pressed faintly at the glass. London never truly slept. The gaslight still hissed along the streets, and the distant clop of hooves echoed through the fog. But behind drawn curtains, the Victorian home remained a haven, a pocket of gentleness in an age of industry. Toward the end of the century, new inventions began to change the very texture of night. Gaslight became electric. The quiet flicker of the candle gave way to the steady glow of bulbs, unblinking and modern. For some, this was progress. For others, it felt like the loss of something sacred. Writers lamented the death of darkness. They feared that constant light would rob people of reflection, that the gentle boundaries of evening would dissolve into restless wakefulness. And indeed, as the century turned, sleep began to shorten. Late-night reading, letter writing, and the hum of modern life crept ever later into the hours once reserved for dreams. Still, traditions lingered. The smell of lavender, the rustle of linen, the quiet act of setting one's watch upon the bedside. These small gestures continued to link each generation to the last. In country homes, maids still warmed beds with brass pans, and in city flats, candles still flickered beside prayer books. The Victorians, for all their strictness, understood something we often forget, that sleep is not merely an end, but a ritual of renewal. It is the gentle drawing of a curtain between the clamour of day and the stillness of the self. So tonight, as you rest, imagine yourself beneath one of those heavy quilts, the fire low, the scent of lavender in the air. Outside, the city quiets. The gaslight hums softly through the fog. Somewhere, a distant clock strikes 11. You turn the page of your book one last time, close your eyes, and surrender to the hush. And so, dear listener, as the candles fade and the night deepens, may your dreams be filled with the soft echoes of history. Until next time, sleep well.